explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate tracker on WION World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Modi Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas is about the Trump tariff bloodbath. We tell you all that you need to know about the market mayhem, the Black Monday massacre, as it's been called, the negotiations, and what experts are saying about what lies ahead. We tell you why what's unfolding right now has the potential to have far-reaching implications beyond what's being seen right now, and what the possible scenarios could be. This is coming up in just a bit, and here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. As Israel continues to pound Gaza and the death toll continues to mount, Israel now controls 50% of Gaza after raising land to expand its buffer zone. What are things looking like on the ground and where are they headed? We tell you all about the most powerful military bases that will shape the next world war. You don't want to miss this. This and more coming up tonight. It was a rather chaotic Monday at the global markets, to say the least. A massacre, if you will, and all thanks to US President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. US stocks tumbled for a third straight day on Monday, and the S&P 500 entered bear market territory. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down more than 17% below its as fears of a recession mounted on Monday, with some media outlets in fact saying that the Trump administration was mulling a 90-day pause on tariffs with the exception of China, investors breathed a huge sigh of relief. But then White House officials refuted those claims, saying such reports were fake news. Trump calls it medicine, but for investors, it's a bitter pill to swallow. On Monday morning, markets were in free fall from Tokyo to London. The outlook was grim. Asian equities suffered steep declines, while European shares plunged to their lowest in 16 months. Oil prices still plummeting. Anxiety about a US recession is palpable. Goldman Sachs has predicted a 45% chance of recession, 45% within the 12 months. But even as global markets spiral downward, Trump took to Truth Social, calling the situation a quote-unquote beautiful thing to behold. He claimed that tariffs were the remedy for America's massive financial deficits with countries like China, even the European Union, and that they are already bringing in billions. He insists that foreign governments will have to pay a lot of money in order to lift these levies.
Is there pain in the market? At some point, you're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put. Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid. I mean, I think it's I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. We will be taking in over $1 trillion over the next short period of time with the tariffs that I've already instituted. They're already in place.
So what exactly is Trump's strategy is the immediate question. Will these tariffs lead to a recession? Economists are surely concerned and the signs are troubling. Let's just take a closer look at Asia for now. On Monday, stocks experienced their worst rout in decades. Japan's Nikkei plummeted by 8.8%, hitting levels not seen since October 2023 and finished down 7.8%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index collapsed by 13.2%, which is its most significant one-day decline since 1997. Taiwan witnessed a 9.7% drop. That's the biggest ever one-day drop on record, by the way. While China's Shanghai Composite Index closed down 7.34%, just to give you a sense of what things look like. In an attempt to stabilize markets, China's sovereign fund intervened, but it was a morning of devastation across the board. Let's just look at Europe for now. European markets followed suit. Banks and defense companies took big hits. Once hot-performing defense shares experienced their largest declines since April 2020. Even billionaire investor Bill Ackman, who backed Trump's presidential campaign, is now calling for a pause on the tariffs to prevent an economic nuclear winter, quote-unquote. He said, and I'm quoting, "The president is losing the confidence of business leaders around the globe." The recession fears are very real. It means a significant decline in economic activity persisting for months. It's evident in the GDP, employment, retail sales, for that matter. Forbes warns that a recession in 2025 could trigger widespread economic disruption, soaring unemployment, and a substantial contraction of corporate profits. In fact, small businesses in particular may face dire consequences because they have limited financial buffers. Just to put this simply, the common man is hit the hardest, with job losses, reduced wages, difficulty finding new work, along with potential strain on finances, and a general sense of economic uncertainty. According to Forbes, the potential fallout in the US could erase $5 to $8 trillion in household wealth and further suppress consumer spending. But here's what's compounding the issue in the United States. Recent budget cuts by the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency have allegedly weakened safety nets like unemployment insurance, food assistance. The bottom line is grim: mounting inflation, high interest rates, rising household debt, and escalating trade tensions, now worsened by the sweeping Trump tariffs. It's the perfect cocktail of factors to bring recession risks to a critical level. Yet, Donald Trump remains unfazed, it seems. Despite the trillions lost in market value, he said, and I'm quoting here, "I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something," quote unquote. As he returned from a weekend of golfing in Florida, the US president emphasized that foreign negotiations depend on monetary concessions. On Monday, he urged patience and warned against panic as markets drop. In a post Monday, ahead of markets opening in the United States, he said, and I'm quoting, "The United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panican," quote unquote. So is this a strategy to secure concessions? Or will this redefine US trade policy permanently? The short and simple answer is we don't know. Even investors and political leaders, for that matter, are struggling to understand Trump's true intentions. Denmark's foreign and trade minister, in fact, has described the tariffs as an attack on free trade essential for global prosperity. On Monday, President Trump said that countries from all over the world are talking to the US after he announced the reciprocal tariffs last week. He said that tough but fair parameters are being set and specifically mentioned that the Japanese Prime Minister is sending negotiators. Taiwan's president has reportedly proposed zero tariffs to facilitate talks and has promised that Taiwanese companies will increase US investments. But even as these discussions continue to unfold, investors are not waiting around. Clearly, gold, which is typically viewed as a safe haven during turmoil, has also suffered as investors sold off to cover losses elsewhere. Now, as the dust settles, one thing is clear: the impact of Trump's tariffs is far-reaching. We are now in an era of uncertainty, to say the least. We now shift our focus to West Asia. Israeli airstrikes, devastation. And rising casualties. This is currently the ground reality in Gaza, where Israeli airstrikes continue to pound the enclave, and safe space just simply no longer exists. In fact, space for Gazans is shrinking fast, with Israel now controlling 50% of its territory. Israel now occupies half of Gaza, and most of this land has been captured by the IDF near the border areas, claimed through razing Palestinian homes, farmland, infrastructure, almost half of which were acquired just over the past few weeks. And as Israel expands its footprint in Gaza and shrinks the space for Palestinians, its attacks continue unabated. Just have a look at these images. Pre-dawn Israeli strikes lighting up the night sky near the Al-Aqsa hospital in Deir al-Bala. Loud explosions sending people fleeing for cover. Scenes from the aftermath of the strike depicting the scale of devastation. Buildings flattened, rubble just about everywhere.
Our houses were hit, so we came here as displaced, and they also hit us here. Where shall we go? Where do we go? If there is no safety here, in our houses there is no safety. Wherever we go, there is no safety. Where can we go? Tell us. Where do we go? Where?
When?
And further south, a strike on a tent in Khan Yunis killed a local journalist and injured at least 9 others. Footage from the scene showing Gazans attempting to douse the blaze. Another strike in Khan Yunis hit a building. Rescuers can be seen looking for survivors there amid heaps of rubble, transporting them to ambulances, while others who managed to escape the strike appeared to be in utter disbelief and in shock.
We heard the sound of explosions. Then rubble started flying over us, so we went down to see what was happening. We saw that the Israeli army had targeted the family home of my uncle Abu Asad al-Nafar. We tried as much as possible to rescue the wounded and look for survivors. We were surprised to see that most of those martyred were children.
You see, since dawn, the death toll from the Israeli airstrikes across Gaza has claimed at least 13 lives so far. And according to the Gaza's government media, at least 57 people have died, 137 injured over the past 24 hours, taking the death toll in Gaza to nearly 1,400 since the truce between Hamas and Israel broke on the 18th of March. The total number of casualties since the war broke out now standing at nearly 51,000. With over 115,000 injured, nearly 18,000 of the casualties children, around 12,000 women. Across the other side of Palestine, Palestinians living in West Bank and Jerusalem held a general strike in support of Gaza. Shuttered shops, desolated streets with little to no vehicular movement could be spotted across these parts.
Today, in Hebron is a general strike by all the Arab people in solidarity with Gaza. We see sights of children that are unspeakable. We can only say, God is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. People today continue, and God willing will continue with the strike, because the situation is difficult. May God be with the people.
And as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meets US President Donald Trump in Washington later today, the future of Gaza would be among the top topics discussed between the two leaders. But for the people of Gaza, the past, present and the future seem to all look bleak at this point. Shifting focus for now, China is reportedly planning to construct a brand new airfield in Bangladesh's Lal Monirhat district, located right at India's doorstep. The proposed location in northwest Bangladesh lies extremely close to West Bengal's Jalpaiguri and Cooch Behar districts, in fact making it a direct concern for India's eastern frontier. A Chinese-backed airbase in the region could potentially give Beijing an opportunity to monitor India's military logistics, troop movements and connectivity. More critically, it places the Chinese presence in dangerously close proximity to the Siliguri corridor, India's narrow 22-kilometer wide chicken's neck that links the mainland to the northeast. While Dhaka and Beijing have not made any public announcement about the airfield, according to an Economic Times report, the plan may have been quietly discussed during Mohammad Yunus's recent trip to China, in which Yunus openly pitched for China to become a key economic partner at the expense of India, adding that India's 7 northeastern states, in Yunus's words, are landlocked and Bangladesh alone, according to him, has access to the ocean. Now, the Siliguri corridor has always been a major cause of concern for New Delhi, and it has accordingly ramped up its defenses in the region. The Indian Air Force has stationed a fleet of Rafale fighter jets at the Hashimara Air Base, just 120 kilometers from Lal Monirhat. These are backed by MiG aircraft and a full regiment of BrahMos cruise missiles, positioned for rapid deployment. To strengthen air defense further, India has the S-400 missile system in the region, supplemented by Akash systems, in fact forming a layered protective shield against any possible incursion. In fact, on the ground, the Corps continue to conduct live-fire exercises featuring T-90 tanks and full-spectrum battlefield simulations. But while India is shoring up its defenses, Bangladesh seems to be drifting deeper into the China-Pakistan axis. Dhaka, for that matter, has confirmed that its Air Force officers are being trained in Pakistan to operate the JF-17 fighter jets, a joint Chinese-Pakistani combat aircraft. Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, in fact, is all set to visit Bangladesh later this month itself. The first such visit in over 10 years by a Pakistani foreign minister. Is this all coincidence? A strategy? Are these developments isolated, or are they part of a pattern where China and Pakistan are quietly but deliberately encircling India? Either way, as Bangladesh seems to move closer to China and Pakistan, India will be closely monitoring the developments and recalibrating its strategy. You can all see war in the headlines, missiles, airstrikes, talks of ceasefire. But did you know that the real preparation for the next war is happening quietly, far away from battlefields? We are talking about massive bases being built or being reinforced by the world's top military powers. From Africa's Red Sea coast to the heart of the Pacific Ocean, there are military bases in the places you've probably never even heard of, but they could end up defining the next war. Here's a look at the world's most powerful bases that could shape the next world war. Let's start off with Russia. It's reportedly building a strategic naval hub in Port Sudan. In February, the Sudanese foreign minister confirmed that Russia will build a military facility in the East African nation. The base would give Russia access to the Red Sea, which is a major global trade artery. Once it's constructed, Russia will join the US and China in the region. Now remember, the Red Sea is among the most strategic waterways of the world. It connects the Suez Canal to the Indian Ocean. About 12% of the global trade passes through it. The military base would allow Russia to secure its presence on a key shipping route and increase its military presence in Africa. And let's not forget, the future of Russia's naval presence in the Mediterranean was thrown into question when former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad was overthrown in December 2024. Russia began withdrawing assets from Syria, raising doubts about the future of its military presence in the country. And so naturally, Port Sudan would be of strategic importance to Russia. Next, we look at China. China is reportedly building a mega headquarters in its capital, Beijing. According to reports, the country is constructing a huge command center for its army, a facility that is basically expected to be at least 10 times larger than the US's Pentagon. It's the sheer scale of the reported base and the secrecy around it that has experts saying that this base could be the PLA's new nerve center, a facility designed for rapid deployment, coordination of everything from cyber warfare to nuclear readiness for that matter. The construction of the mega-sized facility has already raised alarm among Western intelligence agencies. They think that Beijing is preparing for a large-scale or even nuclear war. This facility would reportedly have heavily fortified bunkers to protect top CCP leaders if a war breaks out. It said the construction of the facility started in mid-2024, and intelligence analysts have already nicknamed it Beijing Military City. Next, Guam is not just a tropical island. It's America's front line in the Indo-Pacific, but you probably knew about this base. The Anderson Air Force Base is located in northern Guam. The U.S. Air Force Base serves as a strategic platform for power projection in the Indo-Pacific and supporting deployment of air and space forces. Originally built as a B-29 bomber base during World War II, this base has been in continuous use since 1945. And now the latest report saying that the US is pouring billions into expanding its airbase here. New facilities are reportedly being built to deploy advanced strategic bombers, such as the B-21 Raider. They could also be used for operations amid tensions with China and North Korea. Guam could be the launch pad for American forces in case a war breaks out with China. In addition to being a base, the base in Guam also helps America counter China in the South China Sea. The goal is to strengthen America's Pacific posture and improve responsiveness of its air forces. Next up, Australia. Australia is also preparing to host nuclear submarines under the AUKUS Pact with the US and the UK. It's not just about technology. In Australia, it's about changing how fast the West can respond to threats in Asia. The Australian government, in fact, reportedly plans to put $127 million over the next 3 years to upgrade its facilities at the Henderson shipyard near Perth. It will become the maintenance hub for its nuclear-powered submarine fleet. Remember, Australia is an important member of a grouping called AUKUS that is supposed to act as a military counterbalance to China. And lastly, India. Not many know, but India's Andaman and Nicobar Command is quietly becoming a key player in the Indo-Pacific security. India already has a significant military presence in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, including the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which is a tri-service command, and naval bases like INS Dorava and INS Baz, all playing a crucial role in India's maritime strategy in the region. Located just off the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, New Delhi is building up military infrastructure like naval air stations, ports in these islands, with an aim to keep an eye on China's suspicious activities. It also helps India's growing strategic assertiveness and positioning to monitor China's string of pearls bases. Ultimately, these are not just military outposts, they are statements of intent. They tell us where the lines are being drawn and just how far countries are willing to go to project their power. Sure, we may not be in a world war, but make no mistake here, the world is arming for one. And the Indo-Pacific region could be the next war theatre. Shifting our focus now to the latest storm brewing around Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Two of his close associates have been arrested. Jonathan Urich, one of Netanyahu's most trusted strategists, and Eli Feldstein, recently appointed as a government spokesperson, now find themselves at the heart of a high-stakes investigation. In fact, authorities suspect they accepted funds from Qatar, funneled through a US-based lobbying group to sway Israeli public opinion in favor of the Gulf nation and allegedly projecting Egypt, another key mediator in the region, in negative light. Neither Urich nor Feldstein addressed the allegations publicly, but the timing and the nature of this controversy sparking outrage across Israel. Qatar, in the eyes of many Israelis, is not a neutral actor. It has long been accused of backing Hamas. Netanyahu has dismissed the probe as a politically motivated campaign, calling it a quote-unquote witch hunt. Meanwhile, Qatar claims the allegations are completely unfounded. But the implications are staggering. If proven true, the scandal raises chilling questions for millions of Israelis. How did a country manage to gain influence within Netanyahu's highest advisory circles? Now, these developments come on the back of Netanyahu recently trying to sack Ronan Bar, the head of Israel's internal security agency, the Shin Bet, the very agency that initiated the Qatargate investigation, remember? And according to reports, Bar refused to provide Netanyahu with a security waiver that would have excused the Prime Minister from appearing in court. And Netanyahu's move to fire Bar has been viewed by many Israelis as political retaliation. The Israeli police have placed both Urich and Feldstein under house arrest. And Israel's president has said that the Qatargate scandal raises questions that authorities must fully investigate. Netanyahu's ability to survive scandal after scandal is well documented. But will Qatargate prove to be different? Because this is not just about corruption or backdoor deals. It's about whether foreign interests have compromised the Israeli government and whether Netanyahu knew or worse, enabled it by accepting money. And before we move on, here's a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We get you updates from on the ground as we track the aftermath of the massive Myanmar earthquake and tell you what's happening on the ground. Another child has died as America deals with the worst measles outbreak in over 3 decades. We tell you how thousands of the endangered olive Ridley sea turtles have been saved by local residents through night vigils on Chennai's beaches in India. The war between Russia and Ukraine has entered a whole new phase of intensity, with both sides trading blows in a conflict that shows no signs of abating. Moscow denies firing on civilian infrastructure after a deadly strike on the central Ukrainian city that killed 20 people, including 9 children. Zelensky is slamming the US for lack of response to Putin's truce rejection. More in our next report.
Ukraine is under siege. Russian forces unleash relentless missile and drone attacks across multiple cities. President Zelensky warns of escalating aerial assault. The Russian military intensifies its offensive, launching devastating strikes on Ukrainian cities, including Kryvyi Rih, Sumy, Kyiv and Kharkiv. Drones and missiles rain down, causing significant casualties and infrastructure damage. These images show the devastation caused by Russian assaults.
We saw it from the window. His father ran, he started shouting down there, I don't know, and then his sister ran there too. She looked and said that it looks very bad. Then we saw how they tried to reanimate him. But when we arrived at the hospital, they told us that he had severe injuries to his head, brain and lungs that did not allow him to survive.
The situation on the front lines is deteriorating as Russian troops advance, leveraging superior firepower. Moscow claims the capture of a village in Ukraine's Sumy region and another settlement in Donetsk, marking strategic gains. Ukrainian forces scramble to reinforce positions, deploying additional troops, many of whom lack comprehensive training. Despite high morale, young recruits admit to receiving only 3 months of preparation.
I will go through 3-month training, then I will be sent to serve. When this contract is over, I plan to sign it one more time.
I think unless Putin takes all of Ukraine, he will not settle, or until we return to our borders. I think if we fight our borders back, all of Ukraine, then the war could end.
President Zelensky says that the US has issued no response to Russia's rejection of its proposal for an unconditional truce, which Kyiv has agreed to.
If there is to be a ceasefire, it must be an unconditional one that does not allow for the destruction of any life at all. Ukraine has agreed to America's proposal to a full, unconditional ceasefire. Putin refuses. We are waiting for the United States to respond. So far, there has been no response.
Moscow claims President Putin still supports a ceasefire, but Russia is waiting for several answers on the Trump administration's truce proposal. Ukraine is now sending a delegation to Washington to negotiate a new draft agreement granting the US access to its valuable mineral resources. Previous negotiations stalled amid serious concerns over Ukrainian sovereignty and control over strategic assets, raising questions about the potential costs of continued American support. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
We now shift our focus to the United States, more specifically on the Signalgate scandal. Weeks after it broke out, Walz had partly blamed a tech glitch for it. Media reports citing an internal White House investigation suggesting that Walz had been trying to add a top spokesman to the Signal chat used by US government officials, but he added the journalist Jeffrey Goldberg instead. How exactly? As per investigators, Goldberg's number had been accidentally saved in Walz's phone as an alternative contact for National Security spokesman Brian Hughes. Under normal circumstances, this could have been passed off as an honest mistake, a gaffe, or an accident at best. But in this case, the situation led to several question marks naturally, as the Signal chat group was created to discuss war plans to strike Houthis in Yemen. But what exactly accounts for this lapse in the first place? As per The Guardian, apparently, it's a feature on Walz's iPhone, which is behind the goof-up, one which ended up leaking highly sensitive details to a journalist. Also, the one which could potentially cost Walz his high-profile job. But how exactly could an iPhone possibly facilitate something like that? Specifically, it was the iPhone's ability to detect a phone number in a text, algorithmically evaluate who it's likely to belong to, and suggest that a user add it to the relevant existing contact in their address book, which could have played a devil in the matter. Just for context here, Walz got hold of Goldberg's number last October after Trump spokesperson Brian Hughes copied and pasted the contents of Goldberg's email inquiry for a story into a text message which he had sent to Walz, which also included Goldberg's number. Even as Walz never met Goldberg or had been in contact with him, he saved the latter's number, but under the name of Hughes. To the naked eye, it might seem to be a human error. However, Walz reportedly claimed that he did so only after his iPhone suggested that Goldberg's number belonged to Hughes. Little did he know that months later, it would blow back, when in March this year, Walz ended up adding Goldberg, when in fact he wanted to add Hughes. This significant security blunder, as you know, had severe implications, putting the Trump administration's own digital security practices into question. Moreover, other breaches were also discovered in the days leading up to Signalgate. Therefore, can Walz's claims be substantiated, and what happens here onwards? The suggestions of contact update are mere suggestions to begin with, which means it's solely the user's responsibility to verify the accuracy of the piece of information and decide whether to apply the changes or not. Therefore, the carelessness from Walz's part cannot be ruled out outrightly. Military planning involving transmission of classified information is serious business with no room for errors to creep in. Earlier, Walz had suggested that Goldberg's number had somehow got sucked in his phone, to which Goldberg retorted saying things like this don't happen like that. And this incident in itself is perhaps proof of that even best of technology is not quite foolproof, and therefore warrants users to be extra careful and vigilant on their part, and more so, especially when one is is part of the national security apparatus of the United States, and the questions remain unanswered. West Asia is teetering on the edge. US-Iran tensions have reached boiling point. Military maneuvers and diplomatic standoffs dominating the landscape. Are these dangerous final moves before an unstoppable conflict erupts? Our next story puts that into perspective.
West Asia stands on the precipice of dangerous escalation as tensions between the US and Iran are peaking. Both nations are rapidly intensifying military preparations, with Iran's armed forces declaring full combat readiness, and the US deploying advanced missile defense systems and heavy firepower across the region. The specter of war grows larger with every passing day. Iran's military leadership has issued stark warnings to adversaries, emphasizing its readiness to counter any threat. Brigadier General Alireza Sabahi Fard, commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya Air Defense Base, asserts that Iran's air defense capabilities, bolstered by indigenous systems, could surprise enemies. Recent upgrades in radar technology and over-the-horizon systems have significantly enhanced Iran's long-range surveillance and early warning capabilities. The US intensifies its military buildup. A second THAAD missile system has been deployed to Israel. Alongside Patriot batteries and stealth bombers stationed at Diego Garcia, the USS Carl Vinson joins USS Harry S. Truman carrier group in the Persian Gulf, projecting power as tensions rise. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rushed to Washington amidst growing uncertainty, while President Trump blames Iran for the October 7 terror attack on Israel.
We had no problem with the Middle East. Everything was done. We had no problem with Iran. We had no problem with anybody. And then you had October 7th. And that was all because Iran, as you know, was not giving money to anybody because they had no money. Now they have a lot of money. So we'll see what happens.
Moscow is hosting a Russia-China-Iran nuclear-related meeting. Both Russia and China warned the US against military action. Moscow says it is willing to help reduce tensions between Washington and Tehran. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has placed Iran's military on high alert while issuing warnings to neighboring nations, including Iraq, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Turkey and Bahrain, not to cooperate with US forces. Tehran asserts that any such cooperation would be treated as an act of hostility with severe consequences. Despite the escalating military postures, Iran has expressed openness to indirect negotiations with the US regarding its nuclear program, preferring intermediaries like Oman to facilitate dialogue. However, Tehran remains steadfast in rejecting direct talks, viewing them as yielding to American pressure. Bureau Report, WION for this one.
Shifting focus now to Myanmar, where the death toll from the earthquake has now crossed 3,000. More than 5,000 people are injured. A total of 89 aftershocks have been recorded over the weekend. Heavy rainfall lashing parts of the quake-hit country, complicating the relief efforts and raising the risks of disease as well. In fact, the powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake that hit the country on the 28th of March has razed thousands of buildings, cut off power supply and destroyed bridges and roads across the country, among which is this ancient historic temple in Mandalay's ancient city of Inva, which has been completely destroyed as a result of the earthquake. Not just that, the quake had destroyed close to a dozen pagodas and temples, which have left many residents jobless and without income.
Brick Temple is our livelihood, where people sold flowers here, and guides explained to visitors about its history. We are heartbroken that it collapsed. It is as if a family member had died.
The military rule in Myanmar has left the country's economy and basic services in tatters. The present situation is grave, to say the least, with rescue workers scrambling for aid and resources. And amid the ongoing efforts, fears loom of destroyed buildings subsiding further, and sudden weather changes adding to those fears.
If the central column collapses, the entire building will fall down. And if the damaged wall falls, it will trap the residents. So, this building is dangerous.
On to the US now. Another child has died from measles as America battles worst outbreak in over 30 years. The 8-year-old is the second one to die from the disease in recent weeks, in fact. In the latest, the US Secretary of Health and Human Services met with the parents of the deceased children to comfort them. This is significant as Kennedy, who has been labeled a vaccine skeptic earlier, has now expressed concern about measles, mumps and rubella vaccine during a visit to West Texas. In the past, Kennedy has been criticized for downplaying measles risks and the efficacy of vaccines in general. Not just that, he's also been found to be making false medical claims, including that vaccines are linked to autism. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he opposed the state and federal restrictions imposed and was even accused of spreading misinformation about the virus. The US has been grappling with one of the worst measles outbreaks in decades. As per the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 607 measles cases have been confirmed across 21 states this year, more than double the total for all of 2023. Texas alone has reported 481 cases, which marks the highest statewide tally in decades. Even as measles remains one of the most contagious viruses globally, but it's preventable with vaccines. As per the CDC, 97% of the current US cases are among those unvaccinated or those with unknown vaccine status. Therefore, it's only vigilant to vaccinate as many people as possible to prevent further outbreak. Having said that, is the US downplaying the disease at this point? That's also a question that has been asked, with US President Donald Trump saying that the measles outbreak in West Texas had only involved so far a fairly small number of people, adding that the disease is nothing new. Listen in.
Concerned are you about the measles outbreak? There was another fatality today, and what else would you like to see in terms of the response?
Well, I think they're doing reports on it. It's so far a fairly small number of people relative to what we're talking about. It's something that people have known about for many, many years. I mean, measles has been, this is not something new. And we'll see what happens. But certainly, if it progresses, we'll have to take action.
Important to note here that the US had declared measles eliminated in 2000, meaning there was no continuous transmission for over a year. But experts warn that ongoing outbreaks could change that picture and even reverse the status in a way, thus putting more and more people at risk. Can or will the Trump administration do more to address this is the question. At least 11 US states in the country's south and Midwest are bearing the brunt of days of unrelenting heavy rainfall and storms. 18 people have been killed since Wednesday. Many rivers are flowing at near record levels, inundating several towns. Massive evacuation exercises are underway. Here's more.
Rives town in northwest Tennessee state is almost entirely underwater. A nearby river overflowed on Sunday after 5 days of near non-stop heavy downpour. Local police has been stationed around the town's perimeter to prevent people from entering. Many of the town's 200-odd residents have evacuated at the fire department's request, fearing worse times ahead.
It's the first house that we've ever paid off, and the city of Reeves does not allow, insurance companies around here does not insure flood insurance on anybody that lives in Reeves because we're too close to the river and the levees. So if he does lose it, we're kind of screwed without a house.
10 people have been killed due to floodwaters in Tennessee alone. This state and neighboring Kentucky are among the worst hit. Flood-hit areas run across the U.S. South and Midwest. Heavy rains hit 11 states: Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas are worst hit. Rain and strong winds are moving east towards Alabama and Georgia. Cities ordered evacuations and rescue crews in inflatable boats checked on residents in many states. Utilities have shut off power and gas in a region stretching from Texas to Ohio. In north-central Kentucky, emergency officials ordered a mandatory evacuation for Falmouth and Butler, towns near the bending of the rising Licking River. 5 people have been killed in Kentucky. Locals say they haven't seen this level of flooding since 1997, when 2/3 of the town was destroyed.
There is, like the city of Butler, it's pretty much shut off for people getting in and out. There's only there's a real small way to get in right now, but we have bolts and stuff in place to where if we had to get in there in an emergency, we could. But it's getting really tight, and if the water comes up another foot, you won't be able to get in or out without a boat or a helicopter.
The National Weather Service warned Sunday that dozens of locations in multiple states were expected to reach a major flood stage, with extensive flooding of structures, roads, bridges, and other critical infrastructure possible. Forecasters attributed the violent weather to warm temperatures, an unstable atmosphere, strong winds, and abundant moisture. They say flooding could persist as torrential rains lingered over several states. Tornado watches are in effect in parts of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Environmentalists in India's Chennai are leading from the front to protect the endangered olive Ridley sea turtles. Thousands of these turtles, in fact, have been saved by local residents who keep a night vigil on Chennai's beaches. This year alone, Chennai residents have saved more than 260,000 turtle eggs that take up to 60 days to hatch. Hundreds of these eggs have perished over the past 2 months, raising an alarm over the perils that these turtles and their eggs are exposed to. Environmentalists saying that many turtles are caught offshore in fishing nets.
Collect the eggs that olive Ridleys lay along the shore of Chennai, and we relocate them to the hatchery which is behind us.
Patrollers keep guard on beaches through the nights, looking for turtles nesting on the beaches. In fact, the eggs are then transported to a protected area and reburied at the same depth as they were initially found. Over the past 2 months, olive Ridley carcasses have been found washed ashore on Chennai beaches. Environmentalists and locals are doing every bit to save the turtles that are set to play a critical role in the marine ecosystem. Our next story is about a football kick gone wrong. And no, this is not a story from the sporting world. We are not talking about football match or analyzing a football player's performance. Confused? Let me tell you what we are talking about. An incident that happened over the weekend in Australia has made headlines. This is Australia's opposition leader, Peter Dutton. He was meeting with voters ahead of the Australian election on the 3rd of May 2025. He was in Palmerston, to be specific. And it seemed like an ordinary day during the election campaign stop. The leader was kicking a football around with children. But then came a mishap. The leader accidentally injured a cameraman. He hit him with the Australian rules football following a wayward football kick.
Yes! What a shot!
It was an unfortunate incident, of course, one that has made headlines naturally. The opposition leader tried to make up for it as well. He shook hands with the cameraman, even suggested offering him a beer to make up for what had happened. It was quite a moment, after all. Such incidents don't quite happen every day, and when they do, it's hard to not talk about them. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off, leaving you with Gravitas Worldview. Thanks for watching.